Hello, everybody, and welcome back to day 3, our final day of this convention. Thank you all for joining us. For those of us that missed it yesterday, we talked a lot about what the Progressive Party believes in our programs. There will be recordings up, so please go ahead and watch those if you missed it. But today is going to be about moving ideas into action. We'll have a series of workshops designed to be practical, reflective, and participatory, spaces where we don't just listen, but we're thinking together about how these systems shape our lives and how we can shape them in return. To start off the day, we're going to start with a question that sits at the center of democracy, science, and trust. Who actually has access to knowledge? When education becomes expensive, exclusive, and difficult to reach, people don't disengage because they don't care. They disengage because they no longer feel like these systems are built for them. And when that gap forms, disinformation is quick to step in. To guide this conversation, we're joined by Jacob Cole. Jacob is a staff member of the Progressive Party from rural New England and has been involved with the party since October of 2024. Grounded in the outdoors, community, and lived experience, Jacob brings a perspective shaped by self-growth, exploration, and a commitment to honesty and connection. He aims to serve as a bridge between people, politics, and science. So everybody, please join me in welcoming to the stage, Jacob Cole.
Hello, everyone. I hope everybody's been having a great convention so far. And I've prepared a little conversation for you. And I want to start it off with a simple question. What does science mean to you? If we've ever been to school, a lot of us have been told that science is the pinnacle of innovation, that it is what drives everything from the smallest microbe to the largest galaxy and everything in between. But what happens when we twist that definition? What happens when that definition is tainted by a society where capital matters more than innovation, where numbers matter more than connection, where the ivory tower grows a floor higher but the elevator stays the same? How does that change the definition of science to you? Now, I'm the first to admit that this is a systemic problem. Years of mistreatment and political jargon has tainted the public's trust in our scientific institutions, but there is something that we can do as STEM heroes right now to bring it back. And it starts with a simple question or a simple statement. People tend to trust people that are relatable to them. Relatable and scientific communication today couldn't be further from synonyms. In a system where college costs an arm and a leg, in a system where communication is not valued, in a system where we, as a society, are more disconnected than ever, how is it relatable? When abstracts contain so much jargon that nobody outside of the field can even read a study or becomes disinterested, what happens to the definition of science then? What happens when good information is locked by predatory publishing companies behind endless paywalls? What happens to the definition of science then? What happens to the definition of science when there's a moral superiority complex based on something as arbitrary as a number, a test score, or an IQ test? What happens to the definition of science then? If you didn't know, I've been in meteorology school for a couple of years, eventually left because it wasn't really my thing. But during that time, one lesson stuck out to me. A podcast that we had to make. 3 or 4 of us got in a room every Friday afternoon, and we were able to bring down complex meteorological topics to a level that ordinary people could understand. And TV meteorologists are the epiphany of science communication today. They walk into a room well-dressed, talk about their dog for 30 seconds, and then give you the weather. They are the pinnacle of scientific trust. So why is it that meteorology is one of the only fields where we are required as STEM majors to take communications and art classes? Why is this not standardized across the fields? We need a new Bill Nye. We need a new person who is able to bridge the gaps between ordinary people and science. The ivory tower grows and thrives on division. It grows and thrives on disconnect and misunderstanding. We need to rid ourselves of this us versus them rhetoric in politics that has allowed us to punch to the side instead of punching up at our problems, instead of looking at the real systemic change that is needed to bring a better quality of life for everyone. And this is not just me spitballing. This is real. This is communication at its best. For example, let's take a man named James. James drives a big truck every day to work, and he adamantly denies the scientific consensus on climate change. How can we communicate better to James that climate change is a problem that needs fixing? Well, the answer is simple. We make it relatable to him. Every day when James comes home, he goes and sees his wife, hangs his hat up on the rack and says, "Honey, there's so much traffic." I come running from around the corner and I say, "Hey, James, maybe there wouldn't be so much traffic if we built adequate public transit here in America." And I think some of you may see where I'm going with this. James shakes his head in agreement and says, "Yeah, and it's better for the environment." So I just got somebody who adamantly denies climate science to support policy that makes the climate better. It's about looking at root causes, and it's about understanding where policy connects through different portions of the ideological spectrum. We must embrace populism, not just in politics, but in science. This example is not manipulation. It's communication. Because at the end of the day, everyone wins. Additionally, we must not see communication as the only problem in science today. The systemic bear is too big to be ignored. We must make college affordable again. We must rein in predatory loan institutions to open up more opportunities for people in STEM. We must expand graduate programs and Grad Plus loans for students. This ivory tower must be collapsed, and it must be collapsed now if we want a chance at a livable planet in the future. But this problem, again, does not just start in college. It starts down low, starts down in our K through 12 schools. Walk into an elementary or middle school today. When was the last time you saw a science fair? In most schools, it's optional at best. We must readjust our education system away from facts for the sake of facts towards learning for the sake of growth. We must boost curriculums at all levels of education to boost passion and to drive more scientific exploration from a young age. This may seem difficult, but we can do this. We need to raise teacher pay. We need to ensure that we're communicating more effectively in all areas, and we can build a bridge that connects people across the ideological spectrum, because inevitably there is way more that unites us than what drives us apart. And as soon as we realize that and become heroes of STEM communication, a better world is truly possible. So take this journey with us. Start looking up at our problems instead of side to side. Start uniting people on issues that matter to them. And that is how we build a better future. for everyone. Thank you so much. And I am free to take questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jacob. Yes, please, everybody send your questions in the chat. If you're watching on Instagram, you can also send your questions in the chat and I will ask for you. I have a question for you. What was like the cause of you becoming so passionate about this? Like, is there like an experience that happened, or is it just something that you kind of just held close to your heart, or yeah, what's like your reasoning for your passion?
Well, inevitably, the Fridays for Future movement was one of the big turning points for me. I had always been interested in weather. I'd always been interested in meteorology, but seeing Greta Thunberg and other people up there speaking out against climate injustice across the world really engulfed and it really grew this fire in my heart, really grew this passion for bridging the divides of science communication. And inevitably, it kind of just went from there. And I feel like shaming the individual for systemic problems is only going to drive people further away from the change that we really need. Again, the example with James, so many people could benefit from green technology, not just because of the environmental impact, but because of the societal impact those technologies can bring to so many people.
Awesome. Thank you. Question from Instagram here. How do you feel about increasing resources for the autism community, and what would that look like?
Well, if you guys can tell, I am neurodivergent. I am on the autism spectrum. And I think that fixing this ivory tower also means opening communication. It also means opening opportunity, including for neurodivergent people. A lot of people on the autism spectrum don't test very well. And we have this emphasis on standardized tests, and a lot of schools are actually bringing back the SAT, and it's just a mess. And I think that to build a more inclusive environment for folks that learn in different ways and that think in different ways, I think we really need to focus on bridging those divides and really bringing a community and a curriculum where passion and talent drives learning. Again, learning for learning's sake instead of learning to get an A. I mean, they're two totally different types of learning. And I think a lot of people that are neurodivergent are still very much capable of showing proficiency in all different areas. And I think that if we're able to open the door to more ways of showing proficiency in our standards, then I think that can be inclusive in itself, not to mention expanding IEP programs and more student individuality in general.
Awesome. Thank you, Jacob. Another question, I'm going to put it on the screen here for you. What's your vision for the development of STEM communication? Or what are your visions for how that effort might develop moving into 2026 and onwards?
Well, yeah, definitely. I think that what's been happening recently with science communication is an absolute disaster. We've been cutting PBS, we've been cutting NASA, we've been cutting NOAA, and we've been embracing this pseudoscience that is creating this dichotomy of information that may not be true and information that the scientists are trying to peddle. And there's a clash, right? And I think that's the core of the issue. And if we're able to get down to those levels, and again, my vision really is being more personable, being more people-y, if you will, bringing that TV weather to most scientists, right? That are able to talk to people in ways that make sense to them. And I think that that is the crucial part of it. And that's the crucial part of the vision from 2026 and onward is we need to be more personable as scientists. We need to not be afraid that people will misunderstand, because inevitably, I think that people can be misinformed very easily, but I don't think people are stupid. And I think that if you're able to bring a scientific message down to a 30-second to 2-minute elevator pitch, I think a lot more people are going to start listening to the real science than whatever BS is being peddled by AI algorithms or crazy conspiracy theorists online.
Totally. Yeah, I think that there is a huge gap between kind of the science that we know and all of the research that's being done, and then what the public is actually able to comprehend and understand, and what makes it all the way down to the bottom. I have another question for you. And then again, if anyone has any more questions, please feel free to throw them in the chat. So when we're talking, the whole, like the top of this talk is about kind of restoring trust in science and how important that is. What are one or two misconceptions that you think people often have that kind of starts to break down that trust in the first place?
The biggest one, I think, is the misconception that scientists are part of the elite. I think that that is inevitably one of the biggest pathways down the conspiracy theory rabbit hole, if you will. And it all goes down to the cost of college, inevitably. It all comes down to not being able to access scientific information without paying an arm and a leg for it. I think that's, a key issue as well when it comes to what really separates people and what really grows the divide. And then another misconception, too, is that scientists are inherently evil, that scientists want to hurt people. And the problem with that is that that is actually a belief that a lot of people have because of what our government has done in the past, because of what big pharma and big insurance have done in the past, because of things like the Tuskegee incident. Those are all things that bridge and that actually separate people from sound science and make them very distrustful of it. If we're able to build a science that works for everybody, we cannot have the only option when you get out to be destructive towards people, right? Like, mean science is a thing, inevitably. And in a lot of cases, those involved in it are victims of circumstance, because I've got friends right now that are looking for jobs. I've got people that just got out with an engineering degree, and the phone's ringing off the hook for Lockheed Martin, for Boeing, for Raytheon, but not many calls from the National Park Service, not many calls from independent labs, not many calls from organizations that actually want to do the good science and do the things that really matter. Not many calls from nuclear fusion laboratories. It's all MIC, it's all corporate jobs, and a lot of people are forced into $400,000-$500,000 in debt. If Lockheed Martin calls and gives you a good option to do mean science, you're going to do some mean science.
100%, yeah. I got, I think, one more question for you, and then we'll kind of close things up here. I think this kind of goes hand in hand with what you were just talking about, and you kind of frame education more as a democratic issue, not just an academic issue. So what happens to a democracy when large part, most of the population feels like they're locked out of education and learning in general?
Oh, absolutely. When people are locked out, they often become they become either cynical or they look for answers, right? Like, take any situation. Let's say you got the rotten end of a deal and you don't know anything about it. The first guy that says, hey, I can help you get back at the person who gave you a rotten deal, that person is going to become very, very attached to that ideology. And who is that person in 2024 who at least promised that he could do things, that at least promised that he could get gas down to $1.99? That was Donald Trump. And the point here is to not have bad deals in the first place. The point here is to listen to where people are coming from, to actually not ignore our communities and actually boost education. And if you feel locked out of something, you're going to start to despise it. People are attached to folks who are agreeable and who are relatable to them. They aren't going to be attached to somebody who seems a mile apart, who's inside an institution that you're locked out of.
All right, we got another question in the chat here from Ajak. It's going to be a two-parter, so just give me a second. So first part here, in political movements, easy vocabulary tends to go a long way in communicating powerful messages. Have you thought about, in honor of Parkland Hero, what expressions could communicate progressive? Example, climate policy fits on a yard sign. What are your slogans and solutions?
Yeah. One of them is safer streets. I already mentioned that a little bit in the keynote. Walkable cities, really popular policies that allow for kids to get outside again, get more active, and a whole bunch of other things in addition to the environmental. Because when I see climate and I see climate solutions, I see infrastructure. And everybody complains about infrastructure, man. Everybody hits a pothole and they're like, F word, you know what I mean? And like, if we're able to connect that to climate, then I think that's really important. And, inevitably, some of my slogans and solutions would be, hey, in terms of education, one could be good schools for all, safe schools. It's really about getting down and meeting people where they're at and, going from there, really. Because I think most people are mad at the same things. And I think if we're able to effectively put those in little sound bites of populist policy, whatever populism may be in that neighborhood, if we can twist the messaging in that direction, I think that's important. Hope I was able to answer that pretty well.
Yeah, thank you, Jacob. We are running out of time here, so I am going to close things up, and then we will kind of get our next session started. But is there anything that you want to say, kind of leave the people with some last words?
Yeah, just be personable, really. Be personable. And just because somebody might disagree with you at face value doesn't mean they truly disagree with a better world. And if we count people out for that, then I don't think we have as good of a chance as if we try to appeal to everyone. Let's build a better future for everyone.
Thank you so much, Jacob. Everybody, round of applause. Jacob. Let me go ahead and take you. All right, everybody. So the next portion of our events today is going to be taking place on Zoom. Everybody can kind of just head straight over there and we'll get into it. I'll give everybody about 5 minutes transition time to kind of switch from here over to Zoom, and we will have a Q&A session with our board of directors and staff members, so you guys can ask some questions. It'll be kind of like an open room. We'll be in Zoom. People will be able to unmute, so please feel free to join us over there. All right. Thank you so much, and we'll see you guys soon.